The smell of rotting flesh filled the Kremlin. Ivan the Terrible, Tsar of all Russia, sat on his throne with maggots crawling from open sores on his spine. His own guards vomited when they approached him. But this wasn't just any dying king. This was a man who had boiled his enemies alive, who had fed prisoners to wild bears, who had beaten his own pregnant daughter-in-law until she miscarried. And his final days? They were more horrifying than anything he'd ever inflicted on others. What you're about to discover comes from secret Kremlin records that Russian historians tried to bury for centuries. The truth about how the most brutal ruler in Russian history died screaming in agony, abandoned by everyone, his body literally rotting while he still lived. I'm about to reveal the medical evidence that proves Ivan's transformation from promising young Tsar to a diseased monster. Evidence hidden in monastery chronicles and foreign diplomatic reports. This isn't just another tale of royal excess. This is the documented collapse of a human being who pushed cruelty so far that his own body turned against him. By the end of this video, you'll understand why even hardened medieval physicians fled from Ivan's deathbed, and why his final words were a confession so disturbing that the Orthodox Church tried to erase them from history. The descent begins. 1583. The Kremlin. Ivan is 53 years old and something is terribly wrong. The man who once stood 6 feet tall now hunches like an old beggar. His hair has fallen out in patches. His teeth are black stumps that cause constant agony. But here's what the history books don't tell you. Ivan's body is literally rotting from the inside out. Foreign ambassadors report a stench so overwhelming they need perfumed cloths just to breathe in his presence. The English envoy Jerome Horsey writes, "The emperor's body swells, his flesh corrupts, and the smell is beyond description." This isn't just poor hygiene. Modern medical analysis suggests Ivan suffered from mercury poisoning. You see, Ivan had been taking mercury treatments for syphilis for over a decade. Mercury was supposed to cure the disease. Instead, it was slowly killing him. Every dose destroyed more brain tissue. Every treatment made him more paranoid, more violent, more insane. His physicians, terrified of suggesting the cure was worse than the disease, kept increasing the dosage. By 1583, Ivan was consuming enough mercury to kill a horse, and it was finally catching up with him. The physical horror unfolds. The symptoms were grotesque. Ivan's spine began to curve unnaturally. Witnesses describe him walking bent nearly in half. His skin turned a sickly yellow-green color. Open sores appeared across his back and shoulders. These weren't ordinary wounds, they were necrotic ulcers, patches of flesh literally dying while he lived. The smell of decay followed him everywhere. Palace servants reported finding maggots in his bed. Living maggots feeding on the rotting flesh of a living Tsar. But Ivan's vanity wouldn't let him acknowledge his condition. He ordered mirrors removed from the palace. He had portraits painted showing him as young and healthy. When courtiers recoiled from his appearance, he had them executed for showing disrespect to the divine Tsar. The psychological deterioration matched the physical. Ivan began seeing enemies everywhere. He was convinced his own son was plotting against him. He ordered the torture of servants who looked at him wrong. One particularly horrific incident. Ivan noticed a stable boy staring at his deformed spine. He had the boy's eyes burned out with hot irons. Then he had him impaled in the palace courtyard as a warning to others. This wasn't just cruelty anymore. This was the behavior of a brain damaged by mercury poisoning. The frontal lobe, controlling impulse and judgment, was literally dissolving. The son's murder, November 1581, the moment that broke Ivan completely. His son and heir, Ivan Ivanovich, confronts his father about the brutal treatment of his pregnant wife. The Tsar had beaten his daughter-in-law for wearing inappropriate clothing. The beating was so severe she miscarried. When his son demands an explanation, Ivan explodes in rage. He grabs his iron-pointed staff, the same weapon he'd used to kill countless others. In a moment of mercury-fueled madness, he strikes his own son in the head. The blow crushes the young man's skull. Ivan Ivanovich collapses, blood pouring from his ears. For 3 days, he lingers between life and death. Ivan the Terrible sits by his bedside, weeping, begging forgiveness. But it's too late. His son dies, and with him dies Ivan's sanity. The guilt destroys what's left of Ivan's mind. He begins talking to his dead son's ghost. Servants report finding him having full conversations with empty chairs. He orders meals prepared for Ivan Ivanovich. He asks his son's opinion on state matters. The mercury poisoning has now caused complete psychotic breaks from reality. But the physical deterioration continues. The sores on his back begin to smell like a charnel house. Palace physicians, the best in Russia, flee rather than treat him. They know he's beyond help. They know he's already dead. His body just hasn't realized it yet. The final collapse, March 1584. Ivan's body begins its final shutdown. The mercury has destroyed his kidneys. His urine turns black. His abdomen swells with fluid. The pain is so intense he screams for hours. But here's the most disturbing part. Ivan knows he's dying, and he's terrified. This man who showed no mercy to thousands of victims begs for mercy from God. He crawls on his hands and knees to his private chapel, the same chapel where he'd planned the torture of innocent people. Now he prays desperately for forgiveness. His final weeks are spent in agony. The sores on his spine have opened completely. Bone is visible through the rotting flesh. The smell is so overwhelming that even his most loyal servants abandon him. Only a handful of guards remain, and they wear perfumed masks. Ivan's last coherent act is writing a will, but his hands shake so violently from mercury poisoning that the document is illegible. He tries to sign his name 17 times. Each attempt is worse than the last. March 18, 1584, the final day. Ivan wakes screaming about demons. He claims to see his victims surrounding his bed. All the people he'd tortured and killed come to drag him to hell. His physician, Dr. Eliseus Bomelius, approaches the bed. The smell of decay is so strong he immediately vomits. Ivan's body is literally decomposing while he still breathes. The mercury has caused such extensive tissue death that he's rotting alive. The death and cover-up. The end comes suddenly. Ivan is playing chess with his advisor Boris Godunov. Mid-game, he suddenly stiffens. His eyes roll back. He falls forward, his face hitting the chessboard. Blood pours from his mouth, nose, and ears. The mercury has finally caused a massive brain hemorrhage. Ivan the Terrible dies face down in his own blood. But here's what they don't want you to know. The official cause of death was listed as natural causes. The truth about the mercury poisoning was hidden. The rotting sores were explained away as holy stigmata. The Russian Orthodox Church needed to preserve the myth of the divine Tsar. They couldn't admit their ruler had died from his own medical treatments. The body presented even more problems. Ivan's corpse was so decomposed that it couldn't be displayed publicly. The smell was unbearable even after death. They had to pack the body with aromatic herbs and seal it in multiple coffins. Even then, witnesses reported strange sounds coming from the tomb. Gases from decomposition were still escaping. The man who had terrorized Russia for decades couldn't even die quietly. Ivan the Terrible's final days reveal the ultimate truth about absolute power. It doesn't just corrupt, it literally rots you from the inside out. This man who boiled enemies alive died with maggots eating his living flesh. He who showed no mercy died begging for mercy. He who terrorized millions died alone and abandoned. The mercury that was supposed to cure him became his executioner. Every dose that was meant to heal instead destroyed more of his brain. Every treatment that promised relief instead brought more agony. In trying to cure the disease he'd contracted from his debauchery, Ivan poisoned himself to death. Modern forensic analysis of Ivan's remains confirms the horror. His bones show extensive mercury damage. His skull reveals the brain hemorrhage that killed him. His spine shows the deformities that caused his final agony. Science has proven what Russian historians tried to hide. Ivan the Terrible died exactly as he lived, in horrific, self-inflicted torment. The next time you think absolute power looks appealing, remember Ivan. Remember the smell of rotting flesh in the Kremlin. Remember the maggots in the Tsar's bed. Remember that the man who showed no mercy died screaming for it. Power without conscience doesn't just destroy others. Eventually, it destroys itself. If this hidden history shocked you, let me know in the comments. What other brutal rulers do you want me to investigate? Subscribe for more suppressed historical truths that your textbooks definitely didn't cover. And remember, every time you see a statue of Ivan the Terrible in Russia, you're looking at a monument to a man who died with his own body eating itself alive.